I was away the other week. I was a family holiday in Marbella, and I met up with one of my clients who lives there. And he was telling me how in the last 2 years, he's built a business with over 50 million of annual revenue. Now, if you did that from scratch, that would take most people a long time. He did it in 2 transactions. He bought 2 manufacturing businesses, and now he's at 50 million of annual revenue.
Jonathan, buy and build. I've heard you talk about it many times. What are the benefits of buying and building as opposed to acquiring lots of businesses and keeping them separate?
Sure. Well, basically, it's speed. You get where you want to go far faster by acquiring businesses that get you where you want to go rather than starting up from scratch. So the traditional business owner understands that you start with nothing and you work very hard and you burn the candle at both ends and you build your business over a number of years. You don't expect to make any money at the start. And then maybe after year 3, it starts to happen and the money starts to come in, you make the profit. And maybe after 10, 15, 20, 25 years, you can sell that business. Well, that's one way of doing it. That's the organic way of doing it. The faster way of doing it is via acquisition. So we understand and appreciate that if you own a business, buying another similar business or a complementary business, we've talked about this in another podcast recently, put those 2 together, you can double the size of your company within a very short space of time, a matter of months. But what some of my masterminders do is they go beyond that. They go for 3 businesses, 4 businesses, 5 businesses. I think the top in mastermind is 37 businesses to create a group where you start to accelerate your growth. So you can go from someone who has a business doing maybe just a few 100,000 a year to a business doing millions, 10 million a year. So I was away the other week. I was a family holiday in Marbella, and I met up with one of my clients who lives there. And he was telling me how in the last 2 years, he's built a business with over 50 million of annual revenue. Now, if you did that from scratch, that would take most people a long time. He did it in 2 transactions. He bought 2 manufacturing businesses, and now he's at 50 million of annual revenue with a healthy margin on that as well. And the interesting thing is that he has 0 involvement with the day-to-day management of the business, which of course is a very attractive idea for people who are entrepreneurial but non-operational. And he lives in Spain. The business is in the north of England, and he has the management team run it. And he admits they run it far better than if he was involved. So you can be that entrepreneur. You can buy businesses. You can combine businesses, make them into bigger businesses, and then you can sell those businesses without having that day-to-day involvement, which, quite frankly, is where the stress is.
Yeah, absolutely. So the differentiation between a buy and build and just acquiring a business is the quantity of businesses that you're acquiring and the fact that you're piecing them together into one body.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is the strategy of private equity, because you want the organic growth. The organic growth is a bonus, but you can't guarantee organic growth, but you can guarantee that you can double the size, triple, quadruple, and so forth, the size of the business via more acquisitions. Now, here's just one word of caution. The acquisition part is the easy part.
Right.
Or I should say easier part
Right.
than what happens afterwards. The consolidation of businesses, the combining of those businesses, the integration of those businesses is the difficult part. And the difficult part is not integrating supply chain or finances or admin or locations. It's not that at all. It's actually the people. The people make the integration difficult because you're integrating cultures. So you've got a business that's operated for 20 years on a work hard, play hard approach. And you've got a business that's operated for 20 years on a, we are clocking off at 5 o'clock. Don't you dare contact me outside of working hours, which is a big subject here in the UK at the moment. So putting those 2 groups of people together, I don't see how they are going to mix. So the integration of the cultures is the difficult part, and that's where you need to tread very, very carefully.
If you're serious about buying a business, you should consider joining our Mastermind program, a 12-month program where we hold your hand all the way through your first deal with our first deal guarantee. You will buy a business with Mastermind.
I think what's interesting is we heard last week, I think, from James Kahn, who was talking about his disastrous acquisition of Benji's, the sandwich shop chain, and how he saw the demise purely on that basis of the integration of cultures, and the bringing on board of the people of that business proved disastrous. And so obviously that's the disadvantage of buy and build,
it's not so much a disadvantage. It's something you need to be aware of.
Right.
Requires special attention. So if you are not the people person, you need a great people person looking after the people, because as we always say, the people are your biggest asset, but also your biggest liability. If you can support and encourage and motivate and maybe incentivize the team to help you get where you want to go, then you're onto a winner. But the staff can also rebel. And I've had this. I've had acquisitions where the takeover is very smooth and the staff are relieved that you are there. And I've had takeovers where the staff dislike you right from the start. Who do you think you are? And will work against you and will sabotage the business. And I had one where within 12 weeks, that particular business didn't exist. Now, I'm trying to put a positive light on it. It was kind of okay because we had lots of others, and it didn't really move the needle too much, but you don't want it to happen.
No, sure. And I would have thought with a buy and build strategy, you've almost certainly got one in place anyway, but it makes absolutely key the role of the HR director.
Yes, absolutely. And these days people call the HR director the head of people and make it a little friendlier. But yes, absolutely. And you know, looking after those people changes everything, and it is worth the additional investment. It's worth the investment in training, worth the investment in fitting out a new staff room. All of those things are worth it, because if you don't have the support of the people when you're doing a buy and build, you've got yourself a problem.
And I heard you talk earlier about complementary businesses. So buy and build works for acquiring several businesses in the same sector, but also from the supply chain to that sector, i.e. complementary businesses as well. You can buy and build a route which involves the supply chain.
And you still have the same challenges with integration. The acquisitions are reasonably straightforward, but it's that integration of the cultures, the people, that always takes up the time and the energy. I mean, integrating the back office is usually quite straightforward. Mm-hmm. Have all different accounting systems. You put it all into one accounting system. You might actually, coming back to the people, you would have everyone on different employment contracts, and you'd want to at some point put everyone onto the same employment contract. Now, there's two approaches to this. You do it right at the start, and if you're going to ruffle feathers, you ruffle them right in the beginning, or you leave it for a while and do it later. There's no right or wrong with that. It really depends upon the situation.
And it depends on the speed with which you want to go, presumably, because if you're buying and building for speed, getting all those contracts and so on in unified can only help.
Yes, exactly. And if you really are doing it for speed, you've got a deadline that you want to hit. You've got funding that you need to use. You've got investors who want to see the payoff within a short time frame. Then I suppose you could adopt the philosophy of you have to break a few eggs to make an omelette. I'd prefer not to do that. I'd prefer a more gentle approach. But again, it's horses for courses. It depends upon that particular situation.
Yeah, right. Last question. I've heard you talk about this before, that when you're coming to selling your business or your group of businesses, you are open to a whole different category of buyers once your turnover reaches a certain point. In other words, there are buyers who don't want to buy one company turning over £500,000,
Absolutely.
but a group of companies that effectively now merged together, turning over 10 million, is much more attractive to them.
And the reason why is because, a 500,000 annual revenue business doesn't move the needle for the 100 million a year business. But if you're doing 30 million with a 15% bottom line, that moves the needle for the larger business. So the larger 100 million revenue business is not interested in buying the 500,000s, but you might be. You hoover up the 500,000s, create your larger entity, and then sell it on. So you're being paid for packaging it up and fitting it all together and tidying it up, maybe doing a rebrand, doing all the back office stuff, presenting it as a fait accompli for the larger business. And you will be paid well for that.
Just to end off, your inner circle group are effectively all buyers and builders?
Yeah, so everyone in Inner Circle has bought at least one business, and that's the criteria for entering the Inner Circle group. But they're clearly in the Inner Circle group because they still want to do acquisitions, so that otherwise there would be no point in being there. So yeah, some of them are into double figures. Most are, they're 3+, and their ambitions are fulfilled by being part of a group of people doing the same thing. As I always say, get around the people who are doing what you want to do, not just talking about it. And when you're in a room of people who are already ahead of you on the journey or alongside you on the journey, a rising tide raises all ships. So what happens is that everyone starts becoming more successful.